What should us marketers do when iOS 14 happens? Google is going to cut people out, and more data is going to be harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder to collect. Oh my gorgeous data. I love that you're a data-driven marketing agency, or I love that you're a data-driven company, but that doesn't make a change when we have to adjust to what the game is today. So every single day, new companies, new tech orientations are adding in new laws based on privacy, on tracking, on what you can and cannot see, what you can and cannot do, and we just have to tag along and do what we need to do. So what, as a marketer, can you actually do to circumvent some of these new privacy laws and future privacy laws? Because believe me, this is not the end of it. This is the ever-changing landscape of digital marketing, which you just have to adjust and adapt and get used to figuring out that this is the life that you have chosen. Thank God. And make sure that you take the necessary steps to actually keep improving what you're doing. So with iOS 14, some of the major impacts were that some of the tracking wasn't really doing that well anymore. Now there's going to be more updates. Now we've seen Google actually saying that they're going to stop or add in this similar properties of privacy tracking to Android phones. So before you know it, all you know is all the data that you love to have is going to be gone. So what can you actually do? And as I was educated and inspired by the people from the 1930s, the true gurus of direct response, the Ogilvies, the Capels, the people that had to do this without all these forms of data, or at least not the extensive points of data that we actually have, and figure out, okay, how do we actually improve? And some of the things that start out from is like, we cannot adjust the fact that we lose a lot of data, that we lose a lot of touching points that we could potentially utilize in the strategies that we use today, but that doesn't mean that we cannot improve what we're actually doing. These people in the 1930s were masters at what they call direct response. Direct response is literally making sure that somebody who sees your ad in a newspaper, in a newsletter, in a magalog, in something that's sent to your house, that they would take a action. So they take the next possible action. In some cases, that might be booking a session. In some cases, that might be buying a product. In some cases, that might be going to an actual event where they would be sold. That doesn't matter. Like, the key elements of direct response is you create one ad, which has one specific focus, has a very attractive headline for the right audience. It's short, concise, tells you exactly what you need to do. It includes like a offer somebody cannot refuse. So that might be, the thing that we all know from The Godfather. I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse. It sounds so good to be true, or it is so good that I just have to take that action. And it has a form of urgency attached to it. So you could see, like, for example, last minute, or there's only X amounts of slots or products available, or after this certain time, the product will never be offered again, or it's not going to be there anymore. All kinds of things that you can add to actually increase urgency. But what we need to learn from them is, like, they still had a form of data. So what they utilized in that time and age is they utilized contact details from their list. If you're not building your email list right now, or your client-based list, make sure you start if you wish you did a couple of years ago. But today is the best day to plant a tree if you haven't done it 10 years ago. So let's figure that out. And what do they actually call this? They call this first level data. So if you are hanging out with Facebook and TikTok and Google and whatever, even selling on Amazon, for example, they are owning their data, and they give you access to it, but they still own the data. They still do what they need to do best with that data. With the impact of all these privacy changes, we have to adjust. There are technical advances that you could put in, but for a lot of mere mortals, these are not that interesting, because you might need to jump to the next hurdle and to the next hoop when something changes again. So that is something that either you have to take in as an additional cost, like you could add in server-side tracking, and you can do all kinds of things to actually improve the loss that you have. But if you improve your marketing, then we can figure and focus on the outcome. again, first level data, if we focus and measure the outcome. So if you are running ads, for example, and I'm expecting you're not running 10,000 different ads at the same time, but if you are running ads and you want to see what's the relevancy, and I'm losing all that data that Facebook used to give me or Google used to give me, I can still, from my first level data, measure the actual outcome. So are people signing up? Are people buying my product or buying my service? And that data you still own, because that's inside your CRM or inside your Shopify or inside whatever you are doing. So you can still measure back to that. You can still say, okay, you know what, all this data that I have to take with a grain of salt that comes from certain platforms, if I look at, I put 500 in, for example, to Google, and I can look at my own data and I can see what is the actual ROI of that investment that I made. That data is not gone. That's something that you just have to look into, make your own dashboards for, or measure stories of data. Like in the end, if we look at attribution models, we want to make sure that, we're going to use and figure out as much as we can to see the best pathways towards conversion. But that doesn't mean that we have to blindly stare at this, because attribution also might not be the full end to it. Somebody might have seen your YouTube video. Somebody might have read your blog. Somebody might have read your book years ago. And that's now they saw it and that triggered it. And now you think like, wow, I'm converting cold audiences, where it might not even be the case. So a good thing that you can do is add in UTM codes. If you're not already doing this, this is already going to give you a certain level of data, because you're going to see which links are being pushed to where. If you're losing data, accept the fact that this is a ever-changing ball game, and we just have to enjoy the game and enjoy that this is what it is. And once you're actually moving into improving your marketing, there's multiple facets that you can start improving. But if you take away all the data, let's say we couldn't measure anything, what would we improve? Marketing is still applied psychology. So we want to apply the principles of what we know from direct response, from actual marketing, and moving it into how do we implement that. So that is very, very sharply knowing your who. Who are you targeting? What are the problems? What keeps them up at night? What are they looking for? What is their stage of awareness when they look at a potential solution for their problem? Where, that depends on where are you actually going to be available. Is that going to be multi-platform? How are you going to be presenting yourself? And then making sure that you utilize influence and persuasion to a certain extent on the range of where they are. I think the stages of awareness, and if you have interest in reading a book, this is a really, 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 really amazing book. It's called The Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz, where he deliberately explains the stages of awareness. And if you combine these assets into something where you're going to improve your marketing, and then you can take away all the analytics and say, you know what, if I focus on creating better advertisement and then measure the actual outcome of these results, then I can start testing, and still, without loss of data, or with all the loss of data, I would still be able to know, is this doing what I'm expecting to do? And again, first level data, gather emails, gather contact details, gather people's information, because if you're on a hired platform, which is Insta, Facebook, TikTok, Amazon, whatever, if they don't condole you, they don't like you, for whatever reason, they want to kick you off their platform, you lose that. But they can never take away the data and relationships you build with your people. But you have to own that. So get yourself a marketing or CRM solution and start gathering people's information that are relevant towards your service, because that is going to be the biggest game changer, and not another little funky thing to improve your data tracking. And once you have enough clientele to actually persuade and convert, you're going to get all the funds you need to set up all these funky data tracking systems that potentially are here or on to be in the future. That's it. Make sure that you improve and test and get better all the time, because you serving your clients is doing a service towards the world.